video will be a takeaway and overview of Elizabeth Kolbert's article, Enter the Anthropocene, from the book Global Environmental Politics. And it's really a very concise introduction to what the Anthropocene is, if there is such a thing. Just discussing that a bit. She has a lot to say about the impact of climate change on species, and she just released a book last year, The Sixth Mass Extinction. But this chapter is really limited to the discussion of Anthropocene. So in it, she talks to geologists and stratigraphers about what it means to transition between scenes and how they determine that. So basically, geologists and stratigraphers, they look at sedimentary patterns and bands in rock, and they can determine different epochs based on changes in color and composition. And there's various things that can affect that. The important thing here is that each of the last 5 great extinctions are very well documented in these bands and with these extreme changes in climate and the atmosphere, and the direct effect that it had on species extinction. So that's really interesting, and the question becomes, are we entering into a new band, something that will be stratigraphically significant when we examine these rock patterns in the future? So that's the question she asks, and that's the main question of whether or not we are entering into new epoch. And so, just to be clear, the general agreed upon consensus right now is that we are, for the last 11,000 plus years, we've been in the Holocene, which started just right after the last great ice age. And since then, it's debated when exactly human impact started to control the environment and the atmosphere. Some people say that it was 8,000 years ago when we started really mass deforestation based on agriculture, which led to a huge release of or non-capture of CO2, an increase of CO2 in the atmosphere. And some scientists say that this actually held off a second great ice age following the first one that ended a few thousand years before that. So this is obviously a direct impact of humans already on the atmosphere that may have helped us to survive, but nonetheless a direct impact. Other scientists say that it started in the Anthropocene, could really have started in as late as the 1800s, when we've noticed kind of a constant and steady increase in CO2 in the atmosphere. And then there's others who say that this new stratigraphically important epoch is going to be really seen with the population growth starting in the mid 20th century, with the population boom, and going up until 2050 when it's really going to explode. So it's kind of debated as far as when exactly this Anthropocene is going to be put into stone, but it's widely accepted now that it will be, that this human impacted impact on the environment and the climate will have a direct geological impact. So then let's just go over quickly how that might be, how it actually impacts it. So there's a couple different ways. You may think that it's because of cities. We're building on these roads in cities across the world. But it turns out that this kind of construction that we're doing will pretty quickly be given back to the natural world, and bigger impacts actually come from deforestation, this CO2 release, farming, and not so much the impact on the land of the farming, but more the pollen records as monocrops spread across the continent. Basically, this loss of diversity will be seen directly in the sediment layer. Global warming generally, she also says, is going to leads to a few things that will directly impact the geological record and participate in the beginning of the Anthropocene, and that is animal migration. As it becomes warmer, we'll see animals migrating more towards the poles, and animal extinction. As we lose forests and we lose animals, that obviously won't be in the record. So that will be a huge sign. And then finally, with each of the last large epochs and each of the last great extinctions, there's been what are called reef gaps. And essentially the ocean acidifies to a point where it's hard for life to reproduce, but specifically the corals are unable to build new reefs. So this has been what's called a reef gap, and it's happened in each of the last great extinctions. So that's kind of a really brief overview of what it means to be entering into the Anthropocene. There's obviously a lot more we can say about this, but I'll leave it at that right now. That it is stratigraphically significant, the impact that we're having on the Earth, that we'll be able to detect it in the future. And now scientists are more or less just determining when exactly this will start. This epoch will start, or started, and will be showing up in the future records.